And I'm wondering, I feel like I had an answer years ago for this, but I wonder, where did this emerge? Where did the burn down charts emerge from? Who substantiated and kind of cow-tied it to Scrum and Agile? Welcome everybody to another episode of Real Agile or BS. I'm your host at AgilePeter, and I'm with my colleague at AgileBob. Today we're going to take another stab at one of the frequently asked questions, and today we're going to be talking about burndown charts. So let's get into it. Are burndown charts real Agile or BS? AgileBob, I'll let you take the first crack at it.
Well, Peter, I think that burndown charts, depending on how they're used, and this is going to be it seems like our common answer is, depends on how they're used. For the most part, I don't like burndown charts because I think that people try to use them to imply things they shouldn't be implied. But I think if they're used properly, they can be a training wheel or training wheels for teams to try to get better. And by using them properly, what I mean is, let's not burn down task hours and things like that, because that's a chart that could look really good and the team could get nothing finished. They could just have a whole bunch of hours that they worked and not gotten anything done. What I'd rather have is something that burns down by value. So we say at the start of the sprint, we thought we were going to get 20 units of value. And so far, we've only completed 15 units of value. That would be useful for the team to see, especially if it's a chart like most teams where they do a lot of their coding and then they start doing their testing later. That burn down chart's not going to be burning down. It's going to be a straight line that tries to dive down at the end. And maybe that will show the team something that they should know early on, that they're not performing the way that they should perform. Maybe they should think about different ways to overlap some of those functions like development and testing. Maybe they should use test-driven development, some things like that, or smaller stories. So I think it can be helpful. I don't think it's necessarily part of agility to use burn down charts. I think it's just a helpful practice. So I would say, as far as real Agile or BS, it's probably BS, but it could be a useful practice.
Here's a question, and maybe I'm missing it from my brain here, but I know for a fact that burndown charts, they weren't part of the original core doctrine of Scrum written by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. Is that correct? I'm correct in that, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so this was an addition, and I'm wondering. I feel like I had an answer years ago for this, but I wonder, where did this emerge? Where did the burndown charts emerge from? Who substantiated and kind of cow-tied it to Scrum and Agile? I'm wondering. I don't know if there's an answer here, or if it just kind of suddenly emerged randomly in maybe the early 2000s or something. But I don't know do you have an answer for that, Bob?
I don't really. I think what happened, though, is that people in Scrum communities realized that during a sprint, a team needs a way to determine how to track itself and to be able to get better next time. So a burn down chart was a fairly simple way to track how we're doing. And I think it got changed over time to be a lot of different things. For me, the ones that seem to be the default, where we're tracking hours, those probably came from a bad place of agility. The ones where we're tracking value probably came from a better place, but it's a tracking of hours is just, that's a hopeless cause there.
Absolutely. We've talked about that in previous episodes of Real Agile or BS when it comes to estimating with time versus estimating with points or estimating with value and these types of things. Where I stand is I never promote it, other than the fact that it is part of the kind of the beginning of Scrum in many cases, in a CSM, Certified Scrum Master course, or a Certified Product Owner course. Many trainers, many coaches introduce this idea of a burn down chart, and it is a very simple, in my opinion, an overly simple metric to use, where you simply have the days on the x-axis and the points or the value on the y-axis, and in many cases it's a lagging indicator, as you said, that in the first couple days of a sprint, it looks like they're burning down nothing. And what I often say to my students is that this can often be misinterpreted by management, especially management that might not be contextually sensitive or have an understanding of what the team is actually doing. They'll look at it and say, well, looks like you're burning nothing down, which substantiates to me that you're not doing a whole lot. And so in many ways, it becomes a lagging indicator. We can make poor management decisions from that. One of the things that I like to tell students and clients is that the burn down chart is a great starting point. However, there are different techniques and different methods that you can use to ensure that the team is talking about what's going on. I would go as far as to say that no team needs a burn down chart to communicate. Rather, they should leverage a burn down chart or leverage a wallboard or other mechanisms to ensure that they know not only, hey, what did we commit to and what are we supposed to be completing this sprint and how are we doing against that? But in many ways, I've found that as a burn down chart, just as itself, it lacks so much context. And so because of that, it can be used improperly. So I would agree with you. I would say that a burn down chart is not so agile. It's more of something that probably cropped up or emerged from previous methods, previous frameworks, previous methodologies, maybe the waterfall in terms of tracking time, and what kind of evolved into something that agile teams could use. But I don't use it that much with my teams. I don't know about you in terms of promoting with your teams, but I think you did say that it's a great starting point. And so I think it's something that you can mature out of as your teams grow in agility and as your organization improves over time. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think as training wheels, it works out pretty well. I think it can expose some dysfunctions. And as for where it came from, I kind of tell this made up story in my classes where I say, originally I envisioned that it was by value, and it would, because we didn't know how to create value early in a sprint, it would go flat for a long time and then dive for the finish. And people would say, wait a minute, we're working hard, we're not getting credit for that. So then they switch to hours, which will always burn down. It's amazing to me, by the way, that teams will have hours of work even when they weren't even there that day. But anyway, they just go down and down and down, and it looks good, but at the end they got nothing done. So we traded one dysfunction for another. I would rather have it expose the dysfunction, that it's not going down early. And I tell teams, your job is, how do you get that value-based one to go down earlier, because that gives you a better chance for success. And the things we do, smaller stories, we have test-driven development, we have swarming on stories, all these things we teach in classes that help you burn down that chart early. And as training wheels, it exposes those dysfunctions, and I get teams to actually buy in. Oh yeah, that will help. So I think it helps them get started in the right direction, but long-term, I don't think any teams really need it.
Absolutely. If I were to put the hammer down, I would say that burn down charts are not real agile. It's more BS than anything else. And one of the places I always tell teams to go to first, maybe instead or in lieu of using a burn down chart, is to go to the wallboard and talk against the wallboard and say, hey, this is what we're completing. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Here's the stories. Here's the acceptance criteria. Here are the tasks. And how are we not completing work in sufficient chunks early on in the sprint? Again, it might reveal another dysfunction where we're not breaking stories down enough, or could reveal other organizational dysfunctions as well. But I think the wallboard, and this is an overly simplistic answer, but I always tell teams that the wallboard in many cases can be your single source of truth if kept updated, number one, and number two, if it's transparent to everyone, and number three, everyone has the discipline to look at it daily and to leverage it as an artifact for conversation. So in my eyes, burn down charts, not real agile, more BS. What say you?
I agree the same. I think it can be helpful, but it's definitely not real agile. It just could be helpful in some certain situations. And like you said, the wallboard really shows everything. And you and I both know if we saw a burn down chart, we could probably tell you what your wallboard looks like. So it's really just a reflection of that anyway.
Perfect. Well, we'll take that, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Real Agile or BS. Leave your comments below. Hit us up if you disagree with anything that we've said so that we can adjust our commentary if it's applicable. Guys, thanks for joining us, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.